Brand Africa, the making of a disaster. Hello, my name is Collie Brown. Welcome to Africa Business Channel TV, the channel where we offer solutions to some of Africa's challenging problems. Today we're going to be talking about brands, specifically the Africa as a brand. But before we can do that, let's take a look at what a brand is and how it's created. So a brand is a concept, an idea, and a set of images that you want to communicate to an audience. So for example, let's look at some brands and see how those match up with the definition. Say Mercedes-Benz, that is a luxury brand. Now, if you look at Mercedes-Benz, originally it wasn't a luxury vehicle. It was a really reliable vehicle. And if you go back to the 60s and 50s and 40s in Germany, you'll see that a lot of taxis were Mercedes-Benz. So how did something come from a taxi to become a luxury brand worldwide? Well, that's because the people who owned the brand decided they were going to make it into a luxury brand. They spent millions promoting Mercedes-Benz as a luxury brand. And how did they do that? The first thing they did was they actually created a campaign. And in this campaign, or campaigns, because they have a lot of campaigns over the years, and because of that, as I said, they've spent billions. But in the campaign, they positioned Mercedes-Benz in luxury situations. For example, they'd have the car parked in front of buildings that were, worth a lot of money, signifying that the people who own these kinds of things also drive Mercedes-Benz. The people in the commercials were projected as successful people, people who were on the top of their game, people who were achievers. And so the idea here is to create the image or the concept that people who drive Mercedes-Benz have all these trappings. And when a person goes out and they buy a Mercedes-Benz, they are actually making a statement. They are saying that they subscribe to the definition that Mercedes-Benz have created for this luxury item. All right, so now that we've seen and we understand what a brand is, at this point, let me ask you, if you haven't done so, please share this video with your friends. We ask that you take this video and you send it to as many people as you know. Share it with your friends. If you haven't liked the video, please hit the like button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it means a heck of a lot to us. If you have not subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? Please hit the subscribe button. And if you've hit the subscribe button already, please hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when new videos are released. All right, so let's take a look at the United States. The United States is a brand in itself. So we know this because the United States is just the name, United States alone, is enough to project into people's minds a certain image or a certain concept. And some of those images and concepts are, one, it's a rich country. Two, it's very, very successful. And three, the people in that country are well-to-do. But how did it get this image? Where did this image come from? Well, like any brand, you have to promote it. And it just so happens that in the United States, there are multiple ways in which it's promoted. The first one is what we call the news. But the news is not the most positive thing on the face of the earth. So therefore, it is not the most successful way to promote the United States. As a matter of fact, the news from the United States sometimes can be very, very, very bad. For example, you might see on the news that there are constant mass shootings and other negative things that are causing problems in the United States. But that's how one way people view the United States. But the predominant and most significant way in which people come to know about the United States is through its media, its movies, and its television shows. Movies and television shows are single-handedly responsible for making sure that for ensuring that when people understand or think about the United States, they think of it in the most positive light possible. And that is when you watch a movie from the United States, for the most part, you see the United States as being very, very capable. You see people living in really nice homes. You see all the nice trappings of power in the United States. Now, mind you, the United States is a rich country, but there are rich countries that don't have the big, powerful image as the United States. But when you look at the media, look at the movies, look at how it projects the United States. When you compare that with the negative news would be like an inch tall, if you in terms of volume. But the positive PR that comes from movies and other things like that, television shows, that's like a tsunami, a mile high. So you compare a mile high of positive versus a tiny little 1 inch of negative, and you clearly see why when you go around the world and you ask people about the United States, they'll tell you it's a powerful and a very wealthy country. But you know, there are people, lots of people who go to bed hungry in the United States every day. There are people who are homeless in the United States. But you know, if you were to tell most people outside of the United States that, they wouldn't believe you. Most people out of the United States, outside of the United States, would not believe you if you tell them that people go to bed hungry in this. Because they're saying, no, how could it be when we see on television, on the media, on the news, whatever the case may be, how could it be when this country is so rich? That's because humans have a tendency to be overwhelmed by something. And in this case, the positive news so dwarfs the negative news that the negative news becomes discounted. And so the image of the United States is a capable, wealthy, rich country. And that is why people turn up at the embassies across the globe, all trying to get to the United States. Because who wouldn't want to be in a very successful society like you see projected? Now let's talk about Africa. Africa itself is also a brand. And like any brand, where does it get its image? Where does the image come from? How is the image of Africa today, and how is it created? Well, there are sources that generate images of Africa. Before we look at those sources, let me say one thing. Most people have never been to Africa and will never, ever go to Africa. The only information they're going to have about Africa is what they see in the media, and more than likely is going to be what they see on the news. So let's take a look at the sources of information that helps to create the image of Africa. The first one is the news. The second one is what we call the charities or non-governmental organizations, and you sometimes hear it abbreviated NGOs. The next one is our people. They are a big source of information about Africa. And the third one is other media such as Nollywood. So let's take a look at the news. Because, you know, in the United States, I said that the news is a tiny little piece of the image or the information coming out about the United States. It's a tiny little one. But the news, the movies and other things are a tsunami mile high. Well, in Africa, it's the reverse. In Africa, the primary source of information coming out of Africa about Africa is the news. And everyone knows that the news is super negative. Positive things rarely make the news. So what are some of the things that show up in the news about Africa? Wars, country A fighting country B. One ethnic group is fighting another ethnic group. Famine. And you know, when these wars take place, or when these clashes take place, we see African leaders running overseas to get people from outside of Africa to come in and help to broker a peace deal. And one has to ask themselves, what image is that projected? Because that image that is projected is not a good one. It is actually saying that Africans are incompetent. They cannot sit down and solve their problems. It's saying 6 or 7 leaders can't grab the parties that are in dispute and say, let's sit down, let's hash this out. So that is extremely negative. Not only is the bad news about the actions taking place, but the fact that we can't solve them, we have to run overseas. That is telling the world that Africa and its leaders are not competent enough. African leadership failing. And things like famine. Things like famine. When they hear about things like famine, people are starving. That is also not a good one. So that's the biggest source of inflammation coming out of Africa. The second source is what we call charities and NGO. And that, you say, charities and NGO, their goal is supposed to be provide nutrition and help in times of really bad, for example, famine, to help to feed the people. But let me ask you a question. Do you know how these charities, for the most part, these NGOs, for the most part, do you understand how they raise their money? Most of them have to go overseas and appeal to people for help. And do you know what they do? They take images of these starving kids in Africa. The kid is so emaciated with a big stomach. There's flies and mosquitoes all over the kid's face, and they can't even, spot it away because they are so weak and so downtrodden. And they put that on the TV and they appeal to the public for donations. They are using the same emotional appeal as luxury brands do in terms of emotion to get you to buy their product. They're using the emotional appeal. And so when somebody looks on and sees these starving kids, they say, oh my God, that is horrible. And they send millions of dollars to these charitable organizations. And they take that back and supposedly, I don't know what percentage of it feeds the people. But the point is, that's what they have done. Do you know the collateral damage that is doing? Imagine you are someone who has never been to Africa, don't know anything about Africa. And remember now, most people outside of Africa thinks Africa is a country. That's the level of knowledge we're talking about. So they don't know anything about Africa, but they see that young child on news. They must be saying to themselves, oh my God, Africa is a basket case. Are you telling me that there are competent people there and allow this to happen? No, it can't be. These people are incompetent. They can't even feed themselves. It is projecting an image or creating an image of Africa and Africans that is super negative. And I am here to tell you that that image is so negative that even the good that they're doing with the food, the negative image is costing Africa way more. Way, way, way more than the good that it is doing. Because you can imagine you're a business person and you have never been to Africa, but at some point you're going to go to Africa to go negotiate some deal. And the information you have about Africa is what you see on TV, the news, or what you see in this NGO advertisement. You're saying to yourself, man, these people are really, Africans are really incompetent people. They're not as savvy as us. They're certainly not as savvy as me. And these people are also desperate. So when I go to Africa to negotiate a deal, they're not my equal. Even the most altruistic person, they're being forced by what they see to believe that Africa and Africans are not their equal. And then they arrive in the country for the negotiation. And you have an African who's on the other side of the negotiating table. And that African who have been subject to the PR campaign from the United States. In other words, what the Hollywood and all the different choppings of the brand USA. What do you think that African is going to think? He's going to think, oh my God, these people are powerful, they're smart, they must be smarter than us because look how wealthy they are. So you have them on the African side doing the negotiation. And on the other side, you have people who think they're a little bit more savvy than us because only unsavvy people would allow the disaster they saw on the news or on these campaigns. So how do you think that negotiation is going to go? They're going to come with a much harder bargain because they know in their minds Africans are desperate. They need our help. Now, if that image was not, if the image of Africa was a place of competence, of can-do spirit, what do you think the person coming to Africa would be prepared to do in a negotiation? They'll first of all be prepared to offer a lot more and expect a lot less. That is how, when you go into a meeting with somebody who is very savvy, you're just trying to break even. But when you go into a meeting with somebody who is desperate, you go in there and expect to come back home with the cake. And so those things are affecting African negotiations, all kinds of negotiations. Why do you think Africa has some of the worst contracts, some of the worst contracts signed? People will say, "Oh, it's because of corruption." Yes, some of it is, but some of it is just plain flat out the fact that the conditions on the ground in the negotiation were lopsided. The people in the United States, when they look at the brand of the United States, it communicates success, a can-do spirit, people who can make things happen. And you know what? How it brushes off on the people in the United States? They all feel they are capable. But when you look at Africa, what is it going to project? Instead of positive and positive like in the United States, where it's positive image outside and positive image inside, you have negative image outside for Africa and negative image on the inside. And that is causing Africa a bundle. It is causing Africa a lot. It's extremely expensive. Let's talk about the other party in this, and that is Africans who travel. Africans in the diaspora. Let me say this to Africans in the diaspora. I know some of you come from really, really, really bad circumstances, but there's no need for you to come outside of the country and tell the world how horrible your country is. How is that positive for Africa? How is that a positive thing? When you meet Africans overseas, they're quick to tell you how horrible their country is and how horrible and corrupt the leadership is. They're not understanding that they are part of the bad PR because these people they're talking to most of the time have never been to Africa. The only information they have about Africa is the personal one, the one that you're communicating to them. And when they go back and talk about Africa, they're not going to say anything positive because you didn't give them anything positive to go say. Shut the hell up. That's what I would say if we don't have anything positive to say about Africa. Where is the good news in Africa? Where's the good news coming from? Because it's certainly not coming from the major ones like the news. It's certainly not coming from the NGOs. It's certainly not coming from the people. So where is it coming from? And places like Nollywood is at best does nothing. Have you ever seen anyone watch a Nollywood movie and say, "Oh, I'd love to be in Africa"? When you look at the shows, do you feel like Africa is a successful place? No. They've got a powerful tool, but they don't know how to use it. And they don't understand that one movie that you create might be the only information an immigration officer outside of your country might see and understand about that country. And if that image that was projected in that movie was of successful Africans, guess what's going to happen? The African is going to be treated right. But it is of no effect. So where's the good news coming from? There are a tiny little bit of advertisements about certain countries in Africa, but it is so anemic. You need a microscope to see it. Africa has, and they have taking it up amongst themselves to go out and to promote Africa, the continent. Now, let me give you the names of the 4 people that I picked. But by no means are these, it's a complete list. There are lots of other Africans who, some of them might even be bigger than some of these people. But the point is, you have to pick a number. So let's start off with the first one. And they're not in any particular order. But the first one is Wode Maya. Wode Maya is a young man who came back from overseas and recognized that the image of Africa was horrible. He was overseas. He could tell you personally how people view Africa. So he saw the problem and decided, I am going to do something about it. And he goes about promoting Africa and Africans. The next one is Tayo Aina. He's from, and Wode Maya is from Ghana, I believe. Yes, from Ghana. And Tayo Aina, he is from Nigeria, another young man who's also promoting Africa. He's promoting Nigeria, but he's also promoting Africa. And these young people, shout out to both of you young men, and then 2 women in this list. The next one is African Tigress. She is traveling Africa and also sharing to other Africans and outsiders what Africa is truly about. Some of the most beautiful scenes and places in Africa. Africa has a lot of things to promote, but those things cannot be promoted unless someone does that. And the final person is Miss Trudy. They are all, Miss Trudy, African Tigress, Tayo Aina, and Wode Maya are all doing yeoman's work. But let me say this to you. Do you know these people catch hell when they try to go from one country to another country? That is the most ridiculous thing. Think about it for a second. Africa had very little positive PR coming out of it. And these young people are trying to create positive PR. And they are up against massive obstacles. Do you know government should be paying them for the PR that they can generate and they have generated? The campaigns that government have, they should be incorporated into it. They, and among others, should be incorporated in it. So how do we solve this problem? Well, these young people, through social media, solving part of the problem. But the problem of Africa, the image of Africa is so maligned, and the information that is creating that negative image is constant. And instead of like the United States, where the tsunami is the good image, in Africa, the tsunami is the bad image. So what does Africa need to do to solve this problem, to reverse this thing? Africa needs to create a massive campaign, at least $1 billion campaign that is sustained over a significant period of time. Mercedes-Benz every year spend almost $1 billion on advertisement to continue to keep its brand at the forefront. Africa spends less than $20 million on its branding. And yet, people in Africa expect Africa to have a good name. That's impossible. So Africa has to create this multi-million dollar campaign. It can start there. But the campaign has to be done in 2 ways. One is each individual country has to have a campaign for that country. But Africa, the whole continent itself, has to have a campaign for the whole continent. Because you can't promote one piece of Africa or one small part of Africa and don't promote the overall continent. Because most people outside think Africa is one country. Not 54, one country. So the African Union needs to get its act together and run that campaign, or designate a group to run that campaign. But that campaign needs at least $500 million to run at a minimum. And someone will say, well, how is it, where is Africa going to get that money? Where is it going to get that money to create a campaign? The answer is, it is actually spending that money right now, but it doesn't know. When people come to Africa thinking Africa or Africans are not up to their par, the contracts that are being negotiated are at Africans at a disadvantage, and it's costing Africa billions in contracts. When Africa discovers some, natural resource, let's say bauxite, and a foreign country comes in, or a foreign company comes in and wants to negotiate the mining rights. If these people think Africans are desperate, they're going to come with a low ball figure. So Africa is losing billions of dollars. It will pay for itself because Africa's contracts will no longer be ridiculous. They will not be at a disadvantage, because when people come to negotiate in Africa, they'll know Africans are competent people and they're not going to give away the store. They're not desperate. They can simply say to you, you don't want to pay us the money for this particular, what we want for this particular concession, mining concession, then please leave. We're not going to give it to you for less than this because we know it's worth this or more. So Africa is spending the money. It's like the emergency room. You know, if people use the emergency room as healthcare, it is far more expensive than if they had a set up medical care coverage, so that they don't get sick and use expensive, emergency room. The same thing in Africa. If Africa had a campaign set up where countries are promoting Africa, Africa has some of the nicest beaches in the world, but you wouldn't know it. Africa has some of the nicest resorts in the world, but you wouldn't know it. What would happen if Mercedes-Benz stopped advertising? After a few years, the brand would no longer be the cutting-edge brand. After 10, 15 years, the brand would be almost a has-been brand. It would still be a good product, but it wouldn't have the cachet. They have to spend money every single year to keep that brand in everyone's face, to keep it current, to get the next generation to understand this is a luxury brand. The same thing is true in Africa. Africa has to have a concerted campaign. How do we expect Africa's image to be positive if we're not willing to spend the money? You think it's just going to happen? Do Africans really think this is going to happen without us spending the money? A miracle is going to come from the sky? Will we continue to say, oh, the people outside are beating us up? They're telling us bad stories about us. We have the ability to tell stories. We've got the money. Do you know how much money leaves Africa every single year? Billions upon billions. Some of that money should be going into promoting Africa, so that people will see Africa as a desirable place. Let me sum it up by this. Dubai, 50 years ago, was a small village in the desert of Arabia. Today, it is a premier destination. How did it get there? You think it got there because, they're just rich? No, they spent billions upon billions promoting Dubai. So much so that as soon as an African gets a few dollars in his pocket, where does he want to go? Dubai. They've promoted the place as a gorgeous place, and it is gorgeous. But it was promoted. It was promoted. We could do the same thing in Africa. But we have to spend money, because the PR, the brand, Africa as a brand, is not in good shape. Africa as a brand is actually, right now, if you ask me, a disaster. But it doesn't have to remain a disaster. It can be and should be a premier brand. It shouldn't just be about the Serengeti. That's just one little tiny piece. It should be about all of Africa and its people, promoting Africa. Africa has more natural wonders than any other place on the face of the earth. Africa has very brilliant people. Africa has beautiful cities. Africa has beautiful resorts, but you would never know it because there's no one talking about it. And it is not going to happen by accident. Africans are going to have to promote it. And one place they could start is by making sure these social media people get a piece of the pie to go out and promote Africa. And for God's sake, stop harassing them when they travel. They're doing you a favor and you don't even know it. If you have not liked this video, please hit the like button. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us a lot. If you have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. If you have not shared this video, please share the video with your friends. Let them know about this video. And if you already subscribe, please hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when new shows are released. Thank you for watching.